Joke answers are also accepted. Story 1. We were about 17 years old, and my parents were away. She came over to cook together and watch a movie. I let her choose the film, and she picked Friends with Benefits. Then, she placed a sofa pillow between us, blocking any attempts at closeness, and we just enjoyed the movie. Story 2. I went on a scenic holiday with her. She booked us for a couple's spa and massage. We were essentially naked in the same room getting massages. We had a romantic dinner and were really enjoying each other's company, becoming emotionally intimate. I started falling for her and asked if she would like a cuddle buddy. She responded that she would just get a cat. By the time we flew back home, she had gotten a cat. Story 3. In 5th grade, I used to walk home with a girl and hold her books. She just wanted a pack mule. The best lesson I learned, outside of getting scammed in RuneScape 3 weeks later, was that I never got the girl or the dragon plate legs. Story 4. I once walked a girl I liked home after my friend was involved with her. I feel embarrassed when I think about that. Young men out there, have respect and self-worth, even if you're desperate for companionship. Don't be anyone else's fool. Story 5. I pursued a girl for about 2 years. I would bring her coffee while she was at work and take her out on dates. For some reason, she would choose the worst movies playing in theaters. I finally worked up the courage to give her a peck on the lips at the end of a date. Not long after that, she told me she was having issues with her sexual identity. Story 6. The deepest experience for me was quite the opposite. I had a good friend from college, and we knew each other for 7 years. We supported each other with life advice, rides, financial help, and assistance with moving. I discovered she had a crush on me all along when I started dating her friend, and she severed all contact with both of us. Experiencing the other side of the friend zone can be quite difficult. Story 7. A girl in high school used to call me her son. I skipped right over the friend zone and went straight to the son zone. Story 8. I took a girl I liked to the amusement park. I picked her up and paid for the tickets. She ended up meeting a guy at the park. I drove him back to her place. I received texts complaining about how he stopped during intimacy to answer another girl's phone call. Her whole life was filled with stories like that, and it became quite troubling. Story 9. I had 3 friends who were girls ask me to judge which of them was the better kisser. They all agreed that none of them wanted to date me, so it wouldn't be a problem if they all kissed me. Story 10. When I first got to college, I had no confidence. I met a girl and ended up changing many things about myself to match what she liked, which backfired so much that we became really good friends. We would hang out on her bed, pick out music for each other, watch movies, and go out with other friends as well. I eventually got mad at her because I wondered why she wasn't in love with me yet. But I never said anything. One day, I found out my other friend was doing the exact same thing, so I confronted her and asked if she would ever date a friend because he liked her. She laughed and told us she was dating a guy 6 years older than her from home, even though she was still 17, so was I, and said she would never date a friend. That guy was not a good person, but I guess it takes a certain type of guy in his 20s to date a minor. Since then, I have never been in the friend zone with a girl I like or find attractive. It is not good for the soul. Story 11. I had a strong crush on this woman, a vibrant redhead who seemed a bit dreamlike. She even allowed me to kiss her and be intimate, but she never returned any sexual affection. She openly discussed her feelings with another woman, saying, "I have never tasted you." I asked if she would like to, but she declined. Eventually, I decided to stop being her friend because she did not make an effort. Story 12. At one point in late high school, I was friend-zoned by a girl who was friend-zoned by a guy who was friend-zoned by yet another girl who was friend-zoned by me. And no, we could not figure our way out of it until the end of the school year. Story 13. A beautiful and funny girl from my college class approached me unexpectedly and gave me her number. She started flirting with me, and I reciprocated but hesitated because my mother always advised me to date only within my religion. One night, she called, saying she was intoxicated at a party and felt unsafe. I rushed over in the middle of the night and walked her home. She tried to make a move on me, but I didn't, as she was very drunk and I was not. Eventually, I gathered the courage to ask her out, only to find out she had started dating someone else 3 days prior. She was cheated on but stayed in the relationship while continuing to text me, especially late at night when drunk. One night, we met for dinner, had a few drinks, and made out. I pulled away and asked if she was still in a relationship, and she said yes. We decided to stop there. The next day, we talked about it, agreeing that it wouldn't happen again and that we shouldn't drink together. We remained friends. Then the pandemic happened, but we continued to talk. Eventually, we returned to school, and she had broken up with her ex. We started hanging out more, and she became very touchy and flirty with me. We went to a party together and ended up sleeping in her bed that night, but nothing happened except for a little kiss. We got together a week later and the vibes felt completely different, but she told me we could only be friends. That girl has confused me for the past several years. Story 14. Years in a complicated non-relationship with a girl who liked me at first but seemed terrified of committing eventually turned into an uncomfortable situation where I did favors for her. Occasionally expressed my dissatisfaction and was told, "If you leave, it proves you never cared," which I regret to say I believed every time except the last. Story 15. I was friend-zoned heavily by my friend Tiffany. It got to the point where she would change in her bedroom with me present and just ask me to look away. I always sneak to peek. I am a straight male, so I will look. Story 16. Friendzone? Have you all entered the friend zone? I'm over here in the keeping an eye on him in case he snaps someday zone. Story 17. I was always the person who put girls in the friend zone. Being genuinely nice to a girl without trying to pursue a romantic relationship seemed to have a certain charm. Story 18. I have never had that happen. I am pretty direct with my interests. If they are not interested, I move on. Story 19. We dated in high school for a couple of weeks over 30 years ago. We never had sex, just made out. We broke up but stayed friends. We stopped talking for the most part while I was married and reconnected after I got divorced 4 years ago. We've talked weekly, supporting each other and sharing our ups and downs. I took a trip to see her. She lives on the other side of the country, and we spent a week together in separate rooms. There were no weird moments or awkward silences. She has made it clear she feels only friendship toward me. I know the signs. This woman sees me as a dear old friend. Recently, I realized that I am in love with her, but I can be her friend and not make it weird. I already have a really sweet girlfriend I am crazy about. I've never had trouble attracting women, so it's not just loneliness. I also know we would make a pretty awful couple in reality, but I still have the feeling. I can't help having the feeling, but I can control how I respond to it, which is absolutely nothing. It doesn't make me feel sad or desperate. I can observe it objectively and with a degree of curiosity and amusement. I imagine it will pass eventually. Story 20. I tend not to stay in the friend zone for too long. I don't pursue physical relationships to escape the friend zone. If I develop feelings for someone and they don't feel the same way, I prefer to distance myself because it won't lead to anything positive. Over the years, I have friend-zoned 2 women with whom I enjoy spending time, but I would never want to date them. Story 21. Once, I got friend-zoned with a friend with benefits. It started out as just friends, and through happenstance, we ended up hanging out one-on-one. Either our friend groups would cancel plans last minute, leaving us as the only ones who showed up, or she would set something up for the group and I happened to be the only one available, so we just went through with the plans. Eventually, she mentioned that when she first met me, she thought I was attractive and I agreed. Well, eventually we started hooking up every now and then. About the 3rd time we were getting intimate, I stopped because it had been nagging at me that I should tell her I was starting to feel something and wanted to see where it would go if we tried dating. She said she liked me as a friend, and that was it. To make matters worse, I walked her to the door afterward because the mood had obviously changed, and we said goodnight to each other. My roommate happened to walk by, see this, and exclaimed, "I.e. my man." I just replied, "Nah, she just shot me down." Also, the worst part about this is I had tried to discuss my feelings a few months prior during a previous hookup, but I was too intoxicated to remember what she said, so I felt I had to bring it up again. It was a big oof on that one. Story 22. I was always taught not to be friends with girls, unless you genuinely wanted nothing to do with them romantically. I am not sure where I learned that, but it was definitely when I was very young, like in elementary school. Story 23. I have only been friend-zoned once, and it was due to deceit. This occurred in my 20s. I asked her out, and she said she liked me but needed time off from relationships after breaking up with her ex a few months prior. I thought she was letting me down gently, but she kept flirting, telling me she was attracted to me and calling me every day. Several times, she even said it was only a matter of time before we got together. Felt like a relationship in waiting. After a few weeks, she got drunk one night and complained that her ex still hadn't realized his mistake and returned to her. When I told her the next day that I felt used and was done, she asked for my advice on how to win her ex back. Story 24. I'm sorry, I don't want to be in a relationship right now. Can we just stay friends? Sure, not a problem. Let's stay friends. 1 month later, my boyfriend didn't call me today like he said he would. I really wish you would come over to talk. You always make me feel better. No thanks, I'm really busy right now. What? Why? I told you I'm busy. So you're saying I'm not that important? No, this is not important enough to me to cancel my date. You should talk to your boyfriend if you have problems with him. What? Bye. Story 25. I have never had a close friend who was a woman, aside from friends' girlfriends or wives. Story 26. We are going to end up together. I changed my entire life for her, and then she met another guy. Story 27. I think I won this. I traveled to Germany for a girl who I have been friends with for years. When I got to see her, she told me she had a surprise for me. Then she introduced me to her boyfriend, whom she had met a few days ago. Story 28. 25 years. In 1982, I had a huge crush on a girl. Whenever we got close, she found a boyfriend. We remained close friends, and both of us married other people. In 2007, I returned home to see my dad and visited her. She was single and I was too. We had a great time together for the week, just like old times, but with a romantic twist. After I returned to my home, we kept in touch. We never revisited or discussed what had happened. She got remarried and so did I, but today we remain very good friends. Story 29. I met an amazing woman at work. I didn't think she was interested, but she pursued me, talked to me, and invited me out for coffee. We got close and communicated throughout the day, exchanging hundreds of texts and voice notes. I thought she could be someone special. When her birthday approached, I treated her to an extravagant day out, a trip to her favorite museum, dinner at her favorite restaurant, and a bag full of gifts. I really spoiled her, understanding that this was a significant day for us and we were taking things to the next level. However, she then started telling me about other guys she was talking to on Tinder and that she had no romantic interest in me. She was literally talking to other guys on our special day. I realized I was just a stopgap for her to feel validated and desired until someone better came along. I should have recognized my worth much earlier and not let it reach that point. I will never make that mistake again. Story 30. Sleeping together in the same bed, nearly naked or wearing my clothes, with her under the covers and me on top with a separate blanket. She would stay over whenever it got too late. In college, she asked to come back to my hometown in the Midwest, as she had never been there and was from the West Coast. We spent an entire weekend together in my hometown. When I visited the West Coast, she offered to show me around her hometown but canceled on the day of. We smoked marijuana together, attended concerts, and shared many experiences. Then I discovered her parents held racist views. We got into an argument with her mother, who was visiting, about the unjust killing of Michael Brown by the police in 2014. She tried to justify it, and her father was a racist former police officer, so as a black man, I distanced myself from her. After her father was murdered last year, she stopped communicating with me regularly. I have sent condolences and messages of love and support, but she barely responds now. Story 31. I had a girl invite me to a sleepover, only for her to casually announce she was dating an acquaintance of mine and that I needed to find someone for us to go on a double date with. Story 32. So many stories, but here's one. A girl was cuddling with me while we watched Harry Potter movies. All of them. It wasn't a spoon cuddle. She was leaning her head on my shoulder with her legs over mine. I told her my feelings after the last movie ended, and she rejected me. Story 33. I was flirting with a girl from school for a few months, and we both are in our early 20s. I picked her up from work, and she wanted to hang out for a while. She suggested we go to Kohl's, which is a supermarket for those unfamiliar. I thought it was strange, but I wanted to impress her, so I went along with it. When we arrived, she filled a shopping cart and headed to the checkout. The cashier rang everything up, and the girl expected me to pay. I felt completely taken aback, like I was her father. I ended up leaving with a lighter wallet and feeling frustrated. Story 34. In college, I believed that being helpful to the women I wanted to pursue was a surefire way to get to know them better. I had a truck, so I became a personal mover for a woman I had feelings for, helping her 5 times in 2 years. On the last move, I discovered it was to her boyfriend's house, which devastated me. Story 35. In 2018, I was responsible for holding purses and shoes for a group of ladies who were looking for a fun night out. While they went dancing, they considered me a reliable accessory to bring along. Story 36. A girl I was deeply in love with as a teenager was with many of my friends. We would watch The X-Files together while cuddled up on the sofa, and she called me every evening to talk. She is still my friend and has 2 children with fathers who left her and the kids. However, she is successful at work, so her life is not miserable. Anyway, I am still in the friend zone. We are part of Generation X. Story 37. I was in the friend zone so deeply that I was essentially her close male friend. We would snuggle during movies, hold hands, and do everything together. We had numerous sleepovers, showered together, and even engaged in friendly intimacy to relieve stress. I never realized that she liked me, but I had a strong crush on her. She was very attractive. Story 38. I admired a girl throughout my high school career. She was pretty and nice, and I was foolish. In the end, I went to college, matured a bit, got married, and here I am. Story 39. When I was a teenager, around 16 to 18, I was infatuated with a girl who always put me in the friend zone. She had a white father and a Korean mother, was really pretty, and had a fun personality. In retrospect, she was somewhat of a hot mess. She dated a couple of my friends and had a reputation, and I even made out with her a few times, but it never progressed beyond that. Now that I am in my late 40s, I think she valued my friendship, as I was always doing nice things for her and never being pushy. I tried to be a supportive friend, and even though I had a crush, I never made it about that. That said, I am still friends with her on social media, and we occasionally comment on each other's posts. Time has not been very kind to her, though. Story 40. Friend zone? I am still waiting for the day a girl will put me in any zone near her. Friend zone, boyfriend zone, husband zone, the same room without making fun of me zone. Anything. I would even accept a gay friend zone. Story 41. I was focused on remodeling work for a friend when she walked through the house in her undergarments. She would stop to talk and even ask my opinion on the fit of some of them. I stopped working there when she was home. When she asked why, I told her I didn't want to see what I couldn't touch, then felt the need to explain myself. Story 42. All right, everyone, you're in for a treat with this one. So, I had an ex that I dated for 5.5 years. During that entire time, she disliked only 2 other girls that we were both friends with. After we broke up, I immediately started trying to pursue one of those girls because, I had to be a petty person, right? I was about 22 or 23, and she was 20 or 21. We talked and flirted, bordering on intimate conversations, for a few months short of a year. Even when she went to Europe, we would video chat in the middle of the night our time, and I had to work in the morning. One day, we planned to hang out, and I offered to help her with a project for her dad for Father's Day. Her family was out of town for a long weekend. I drove 20 minutes to pick her up, turned around, drove 15 minutes back the way I came, paid for and loaded my brother's SUV with 2.5 tons of white quartz landscaping rock. This amount was about 4 times what that vehicle could handle, and then I had to take the back roads to her house, which took around 45 minutes because the car handled poorly due to the weight. When we got to her place, she made dinner while I unloaded the rock. After dinner is where it got interesting. We started watching Lilo and Stitch, her favorite childhood movie, and cuddled on the couch. This led to more intimate moments, and within 30 to 45 minutes, she was sitting on my lap and we were kissing. I had just removed her top, revealing some impressive features. I made a comment that they were much better than my ex's, thinking it was a good move to compliment her and put down my ex at the same time since she didn't like my ex either. Well, you can guess what happened next. She dismounted, put her shirt back on, and we returned to actually watching the movie. I ended up falling asleep on her couch, and she woke me up at 2 a.m. and sent me on my way. A few weeks later, I accidentally found out through her sister that she was actively trying to date someone else. Story 43. She took me to another country to meet her family and spend time in scenic parks. I was placed in the friend zone a few weeks later and am still recovering from that experience. Story 44. One of my friends had a birthday and she invited a whole bunch of people, including a girl who immediately caught my eye. We hit it off in our first conversation and spent the whole evening together. We bought drinks, danced, and eventually started kissing. It was a great evening. Towards the end of the night, she and her friend, the birthday girl, had a bit too much to drink and asked me to take them home. So I did. I got them home safely, and the girl I had been with all night came outside, kissed me, gave me her number, and said she couldn't wait to see me again. I texted her and waited to hear back. 3 months later, she texted me saying she never saw my message and wanted to go out again. We met up with her friends to go dancing, and I was immediately introduced as her best friend. Turns out that the night I met her, she had been drinking before they ever got to the bar, and I didn't know. Additionally, she had broken up with her ex that same night, which I also didn't know. I was just the fun guy of the evening when we met, and now I'm the best friend. Sucks to suck. Story 45. When I was a kid, around junior high school, I used to go to summer camp. My father did some freelance work for the company, and they offered me a spot at the camp for a discount on his work. I would generally be there for 4 to 6 weeks a year. Now, this was an expensive camp. I was usually surrounded by wealthy and entitled kids. But one year, I met a girl there who was in a similar situation to me. I was completely infatuated with her. Her name was Jess, not Jessica, and I could talk to her for hours. Well, near the end of my first week there that year, we had a dance. I asked Jess to go, and she told me that she already had a date. When I asked who, it turned out to be my friend from camp, Jason. I had talked about how much I liked Jess many times to him. He knew. After the dance, he walked up to me and bragged about how he had touched her inappropriately during the dance. He talked about how he had intimate contact with her. As you may have guessed, though, Jason was not a good person, and after he marked his territory on her, he started treating her poorly. So, I would sit there for long hours listening to Jess complain about Jason. Then they would get back together, make out, he would touch her again, brag to me about it, treat her poorly, and she would come right back to complaining about him to me. Finally, one day I told Jess that I could treat her much better than he did. She responded with, "EW, no." That was the last year I went to that summer camp. Story 46. I took the girl out to dinner. She was dressed beautifully, and I was pleased that she had made such an effort. We had a great dinner and a lot of fun. Just after I paid the bill, she asked me to drop her home quickly because her landlord was coming over that night. Story 47. I pretended to like Insane Clown Posse for a girl who claimed to be a juggler. Their first album was decent. I actually enjoy their wrestling more, though. Story 48. I visited a girl in Chicago for a weekend at her invitation. I slept on her couch and we barely hung out. That was the last time I saw her. I also met my now wife shortly after, so there was no need to pursue anything further. Story 49. Not friend zone, but family zone. She introduced me as a brother and then as a cousin to her friends because apparently the shape of both our faces looks very similar. Story 50. Okay, I've had some awkward experiences, but these comments are making me feel much better about them. Story 51. In high school, I ended up being the only boy in a friend group because I was essentially following around a girl, let's call her Alice, like a sad lovesick puppy. I did everything with her that you would expect any high school couple to do. We went to each other's houses to hang out or work on homework. I carried her books, we went on romantic dinner dates, attended school dances together, and talked on the phone late into the night when we still had landlines and limited cell minutes. A few of these late-night calls even turned into intimate moments where we encouraged each other. One of the last times Alice came over to my house, we almost had sex but ended up getting caught. After that, we waited until later and then ended up being intimate in the driveway of her house when I dropped her off. It wasn't just standing in the driveway. It happened in the back of my old early 90s used Plymouth Voyager, which she called the Blue Toaster because of its color and shape. I asked Alice out probably a dozen times over the 2 years I knew her, and every single time she said the same thing: "No, I'm waiting for the right guy to come along." Eventually, she decided she'd had enough, but instead of telling me she didn't want to be friends anymore, she just ignored me completely. This was particularly awkward since we shared a class and sat with our friends at lunch, which ultimately caused the whole friend group to fall apart, resulting in me being ousted at Alice's insistence. Meanwhile, a couple of other girls in the group developed a crush on me, and I had absolutely no idea until they told me. The first girl, whom I didn't know well, asked me out, and I wasn't attracted to her, but she handled the rejection well. The other girl, let's call her Tammy, I was really close to and interested in. However, she made it clear from the beginning that we were just friends, so I respected her choice and didn't pursue her. Our parents became friends, and our families got together several times for dinner and games. I even babysat her younger siblings a couple of times. When Alice decided to create drama and the friend group started fracturing, Tammy felt pressured to choose between her best friends. Naturally, Tammy and I argued about it. I believed she shouldn't have to choose at all, or she should choose me since I wasn't the one causing the drama. She insisted I was the source of all the drama because I had upset Alice somehow, but no one would tell me what I had done wrong. To this day, I still have no idea what I actually did. Then Tammy chose that moment to admit she loved me and wanted to date me, but giving up her friendship with Alice would also mean losing several other friendships since all those girls had sided with Alice against me. In the end, I guess I simply wasn't worth it, because she told me through tears that she couldn't be friends with me anymore and asked me to never talk to her again. So, I managed to be on both sides of the friend zone at the same time. Story 52. I was strung along by someone who just wanted attention. We made out once, but this girl had a few admirers around her, and I was one of them. I dated girls in between that situation in my mid-20s. Both relationships lasted about 6 months. After that, I became more aware, and it never happened again. Now I'm engaged. Story 53. I met a girl in college. We had a school trip 1 month into our first year, and she and I got along very quickly. We spent the whole trip together and talked about seeing each other the day the trip was over. It definitely seemed like things were on the right track. Except I lost consciousness during the trip, fell on the floor, and lost a tooth while chipping another. The part that chipped went through my lip, which became swollen. I thought I didn't look fit to flirt anymore. When she saw me back from the hospital, she gave me a big hug. We had a conversation where I said something that sounded like I liked her, and we both fell silent while looking at each other, but due to my mouth, I didn't pursue anything. She came over to my house, and we spent all our school time and after-school time together. I would give her rides, and everyone thought we were dating. That frustrated her. "No, we're not," was something she said at least 20 times during our school days. She eventually met an old friend from high school, and he was clearly flirting with her. I told her I liked her, but she got up and left, then came back as if nothing had happened. She ended up telling me she didn't want to date me via Messenger and that we should just stay friends. We remained friends for a long time. People kept asking if we were dating, which annoyed her greatly. I feel fairly confident that if I hadn't damaged my teeth and had been more confident, I would have had a chance. Bonus story. She had a strange guy flirt with her and tell her he loved her. She asked me, "Why do only unattractive guys ask me out?" I didn't connect the dots back then, but I should have joked that I asked her out. Story 54. We were both in Las Vegas for work. I met her on Tumblr and chatted with her daily on Snapchat for 2 years. She asked me to stay in her hotel room for 2 nights so we could hang out and cuddle. I tried to kiss her, but she backed away and said she was not in anything physical with me. Story 55. I often engage in mutual feelings with others. From what I've noticed, if I connect with someone, I can make them feel like I'm interested in them. Some want to pursue that connection, while others prefer to keep it casual. My sister tells me that when I am single, I tend to avoid romantic advances, but being placed in the friend zone doesn't bother me since I rarely seek out relationships anyway. Story 56. The girl I was friends with during my sophomore year of college was very attractive but struggled with mental health issues stemming from early sexual abuse. She also had a wealthy father who never gave her the attention she needed. She wanted to sleep with me, but only for physical reasons. She took me to strip clubs for my birthday and even showered with me. We almost engaged in intimate activities multiple times, but she never proceeded with anything further. She enjoyed the attention and comfort but didn't want anything more serious. She liked playing mind games. This went on for about a year until I finally had enough and ended the relationship. We went out, but it was never a date. I am glad we didn't have unprotected sex that time we almost did, and she backed off. She was very attractive but unstable. She became extremely angry when I stopped giving her attention. It was clear that I was just being used. Story 57. I was once married, and my wife, now my ex, told me she just wanted to be friends. That's about as deep as it gets, I think. Story 58. I'm still in one. I'm invited to her wedding. With that, I'll probably be released from the zone. Took me long enough too. It's been like 13 years. Story 59. I attended her wedding. It's a long and involved story, but I figured going would at least bring me closure. We became close over the years, having met when we were 18. Ultimately, I didn't date her because my best friend was also interested, and she didn't want to hurt our friendship. We did share a kiss once, which, even now at 33, is the romantic highlight of my life. A few years later, she moved to another state to be with her then fiancé. I visited her, and we spent nearly the entire weekend together while her fiancé stayed at home. We went to bars, explored the city, visited the zoo, and had dinner. At one point, she just stopped, stared at me, and said, "Thank you." When I asked why, she said she had never done things like this before. During dinner, she expressed doubts about marrying him. I remarked that I knew how I felt, but it was up to her. I often wonder what would have happened if I had pushed the issue. So she married him. Our mutual friends placed bets on how long they would last. I visited again about a year later. She seemed oddly excited leading up to my visit and was very flirty in her messages. This time when I visited, I also spent time with her husband. Then he went to work and she invited me to her place. Felt like we were on the verge of being unfaithful, but I stopped myself. She apologized afterward. I wanted to, for sure, but morally I couldn't. About 2 years after their marriage, they divorced. After a while, we had an open conversation about our near experience. She expressed that she had really wanted to act on it, but was glad I stopped, mentioning that she saw me as possibly the person she was meant to be with. However, she was still living in a different state with a job and a house she had purchased. Now, she is dating someone else there. For over 15 years, we have been very close, but timing, distance, and other relationships have gotten in the way. I could have disregarded my morals and escaped the friend zone. She deeply regrets not acting on it, not that it could have happened, but that it almost did. The silver lining for her was that it opened her eyes to the frustration and unhappiness she experienced in her marriage. As for me, I don't see a silver lining. At least I wasn't a homewrecker. Yet, I acknowledge that even if it wasn't physical infidelity, I've heard of the concept of emotional infidelity, and in a way, I guess that's what happened between us. Story 60. I've never really been friend-zoned, and if anything, I was the one friend-zoning girls. As someone else mentioned, if I want to be friends, I remain friends. Being nice to women without any romantic intent can drive some of them crazy. There was a girl whom I may have been friend-zoned by for a month. We were in mutual friend groups in college at neighboring schools. My friends and her friends would go out frequently. I had a long-term girlfriend, and she had a long-term boyfriend. Whenever we went out as a group, she and I would pretend to be dating to ward off others. Naturally, we talked a lot and became pretty close friends to the point where we would talk outside of our outings and discuss our respective relationships. It offered a fresh perspective for both of us. Eventually, my girlfriend broke up with me, and although I was now single and all of her friends were interested in me, I really wanted to date her. We continued talking, but she was different than before and never mentioned her boyfriend again. About a month after my relationship ended, her boyfriend broke up with her, and seemingly within 24 hours, she was in my bed. Story 61. I have had female friends sleep in only their underwear in my bed. We are just friends. This has happened with 3 different girls, all of whom I am still friends with. All 3 have confirmed they are not interested in me. They just felt safe enough to be comfortable. Story 62. Deep went on many lunch dates, movies, and comedy shows. Slept in the same bed and cuddled but never had a real chance. Story 63. Changing in front of me. I'm not sure if she knew. She would have to be as oblivious as some men to not realize that I was into her. But she was not interested in me. Just comfortable. Story 64. In my sophomore year of high school, a girl asked me to hang out with her on the first day of classes. I didn't particularly like her, but she was cute. After months of her inviting me to hang out wherever she went, she made it seem like she liked me and wanted to go to the homecoming dance together. I asked her, and she immediately replied, "No, I just like other guys that don't go to this school." The rejection didn't hurt as much as other times when I liked girls who didn't like me back. It then occurred to me, why was I following a girl around like a puppy dog when I didn't even really like her? She was using me for validation and had no intention of reciprocating any feelings. It became easier to identify women like that later in life. Story 65. Back in school, I had very low self-esteem due to family and school bullying. If you weren't extremely thin, you were considered overweight. I have always been a big guy, and my body structure complements my height. I never realized that girls appreciated this structure while my family and peers criticized me for being overweight. I ended up placing 3 girls in the friend zone who were showing interest in me. One always gave signals that I was too oblivious to notice. The second girl straightforwardly asked me out, and I assumed someone was probably recording me to laugh at my expense. The third girl expressed that she thought she was in love with me, but I considered her way out of my league back then, so I just thanked her and went to class. Story 66. I talked with a girl every day for 7 years. I tried to help her reach her dreams and supported her during tough times. I visited her in New York City and spent a day hanging out as friends. When I confessed my feelings, she told me I was a great friend but never spoke to me again. Story 67. Honestly, I have never tried to pursue anyone who was a friend or anyone who clearly wasn't interested in me. Story 68. It was kind of my fault. I had an on and off relationship with a girl in high school, and we ended up hanging out a few times as adults. Eventually, my relationship ended, and hers followed a couple of months later. She told me that she broke up with her boyfriend partially because she knew guys like me existed and that she wanted to pursue something with me. At that time, I told her I didn't want to be in a relationship. Fast forward about 10 months later, we hung out a few times, attended some festivals and fairs during the summer, went to a fancy bar, had dinner, and ended with a movie. We talked about everything, and she mentioned that she just wanted to be a good friend. I definitely got different vibes from her that night, but remember, some people like the idea of you more than they do the reality. You have to learn to connect with those who truly want to be with you. Story 69. I was friends with a woman for 4 years. I thought she was cute at the time and wanted to be around her constantly. She would enter into relationships, leave them, and engage in long-distance relationships. In either situation, I served as her emotional support. I realized after a few years that she was using me as an emotional crutch. We had what I thought was an emotionally intimate relationship, but it really wasn't. It only went one way, my needs were not being met, and she was sabotaging my dating life. However, when she felt me slipping away, she would create some sexual tension to make me think I had a chance. I met my wife and wanted to keep this other friend, but my wife helped me gain clarity and understand how negatively that other woman affected me for years. My wife and I are now happily married with a child, 8 years later. Story 70. I had a massive crush on a girl for about a month. We went on 5 or 6 dates, and she even kissed me once. The next time out, I was about to ask her over when she launched into a long story about how much she loved her brother. At that point, she said I reminded her of him, which abruptly placed me in the friend zone. Story 71. We were in high school. She had a boyfriend, and I was aware of it. I was even friends with him. Still, I found myself waiting with her for her boyfriend to come out of his class. Those conversations I had with her were at least entertaining. Story 72. I spent a year together at university, every day from the first lecture to the last, studying and mostly roaming about the streets. We talked about everything and anything, cried together and laughed together. I made notes for her in her own language, as she didn't know much about that subject. She flirted with me a lot, which was made clear to me by my other female friends. Then, I asked her if she wanted to go on a date, and her answer left me with mixed feelings. Now I don't talk to her, and she is upset that I have stopped giving her attention and have moved on. Story 73. Back in high school almost 20 years ago, I met a very cute, nerdy girl from a different class. As I made friends after moving to a new city, we realized we had several mutual friends and lived just a few hundred meters apart. We started writing on Instant Messenger and talking on the phone, as well as hanging out and watching movies. I developed a major crush on her. She was the first girl to show any real interest in me. Before that, I mostly faced rejection from other girls. Since we shared many interests, talking with her was easy. However, she had a boyfriend, so I didn't make any moves for a while. He was 26 years old while she was just 16, which her parents somehow accepted. I can't understand how they allowed that. If I had a daughter, he would land in the hospital. He was disrespectful, and she often complained about how he treated her, but the next week she would be back to feeling happy with him. In our second year, we grew even closer and started kissing and touching, even while she was still with him. I tried to help her see how poorly he treated her, but she wouldn't break up with him. I'm not sure if what she told me was entirely true. We occasionally got caught by classmates while kissing when we thought we were alone, including one time by a teacher while we waited in the classroom for the next lesson to start. After that, things cooled down a bit and we stopped seeing each other as much. We still hung out occasionally and shared light kisses, but it wasn't as intense as before. Later that year, I met another girl who was a year older, and we hit it off right away. I was no longer intimate with the first girl. This new relationship was different, and I finally had a sexual experience. It lasted a couple of years before we split up, and I also had 2 shorter flings with 2 other women. During those flings, I learned valuable lessons about intimacy and relationships. Those experiences were not just friend zones because we shared physical and intimate moments. Story 74. In university, a very popular girl had many lads who wanted to go out with her. I was ignored to the point that one of the lads stabbed a knife through my door out of jealousy. Story 75. I would say the deepest in the friend zone I have ever been is right now. I am married with 7 and 5-year-old daughters. Story 76. My first big love in high school was my best friend for more than 2 years. I planned to leave for the United States from Germany for a year as an exchange student, thinking I didn't have to lose much. On the last day before leaving, I asked her if she would be my girlfriend. She said yes. She also organized to stay overnight at my place. We cuddled. I was a virgin and very careful. She was experienced. She ended it with her first letter, weeks after I left for the States, stating that she wanted a man who knows what he wants. I sometimes wonder how my life would have turned out if I had initiated something more than cuddling that night. Story 77. After watching the movie Kick-Ass, in which the protagonist pretends to be gay to get closer to his crush, I pretended to have parthenophobia, the fear of women, to get closer to my crush. Things went fine for a long time until they didn't. When the truth came out, as it always does, she kicked me to the curb. Story 78. I took a girl I knew on a very obvious date on Valentine's Day. We went back to her place for a few drinks. She asked if I wanted to stay the night and took me to her bed. I got in, and she came out of the bathroom and started piling cushions down the middle of the bed until I was practically trapped against the wall. I couldn't even sneak out early in the morning until I heard her wake up, and then I could finally make my way to the bathroom. I had a really awkward bus ride with her back to university. Story 79. A girl who left after 5th grade was moving back to town and would be returning to our class. We were in 9th grade, around 15 or 16 years old at that point. We never got along in 5th grade, and as if fate intended for this to happen, we ended up sitting right next to each other. Social media was beginning to gain popularity at that time. I checked out her pictures on a social networking site from time to time during the years she was away and noticed that, despite my dislike for her, I couldn't deny that she was very attractive to me. She moved back, and we ended up sitting next to each other in several classes. Initially, I was still distant and cold towards her, but over time, things changed. Obviously, as teenagers, hormones were running high, and as classmates, we began talking and joking during class frequently. At some point, she started to get to me. She was easily the most popular girl in school, did cheerleading, had long blonde hair, and blue eyes, the complete package. During my teenage years, I was obsessed with being praised by my peers for having an attractive girlfriend. I wanted someone way out of my league to prove a point that leagues do not exist. I found myself subconsciously gravitating towards cheerleaders because 3 out of the 5 women I had been really into in my life were cheerleaders. I developed a huge crush on her. On one ride home from a class trip, she fell asleep on my shoulder for about 4 hours, which was something she had never done before. She usually rested her head on my best friend's shoulder during class, and I can't express how jealous that made me. Anyway, I did her homework for months, walked her home from school every single day, even though it meant getting home 2 hours later. I wrote her a poem every day for 2 years and sent it on a messaging platform at exactly 22:22 because, in Germany, there's a saying that someone is thinking about you at that time. If I ever forgot, she made me pay for it. I allowed her to emotionally manipulate me because every time she was in a bad mood, she took it out on me, knowing I was madly in love and would never be angry with her. She exploited this advantage in every way she could, but I was too blinded by love to see it. I thought that if I just kept trying, she would eventually fall for me. However, that never happened. My best friend even suggested that others shouldn't mention her name around me because she had damaged my psyche. At the time, that was true. I think it was 2 years after I graduated that we last talked, and she apologized for everything. There is much more I could mention about this, but this comment is already too long. She told me she had read our old chats and was deeply sorry for how she treated me. She never wanted to be that person again. By that point, I was already over everything that had happened, but receiving that message gave me a sense of closure that allowed me to finally put that drama behind me. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.